and interviewing. This is Anna Hurst.
This is Anna Hurst, and I'm interviewing my great-grandpa.
And his name is John?
Knox.
What is it?
John S. Somerville? Is it Somerville?
Right.
Knox.
John Somerville Knox.
Yeah. Okay. What?
And you're with your dad, John Knox Hurst.
And the date is February
26.
2/12.
2/12. And
2012.
now, what is your first question?
What was life like for you and your family in the Great Depression?
In the 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And how old were you, that kind of thing?
Well, I was a kid in the 30s, and I was in the first grade in 01, and the second grade in 32, and the third grade in 33, so you can follow right up. In 37, I was in the 7th grade, so I got to see all of this, and we lived on Peachtree Road. It was much more severe than the so-called recession we have now.
Mm-hmm.
Are you recording?
Yes, it's working fine.
Okay.
I was just making sure. Okay, in E River School on Peachtree, right?
Yeah, I went to E Rivers, and
Elementary.
we lived right there where Houston's is now on Peachtree. And I walked to school to E Rivers, and my grandmother's house was right there where Houston's is, and we lived in the apartment my father built right next door. And it was near the Seaboard Railroad tracks that are right there, and we would see people that didn't have any homes riding the railroads.
Hobos.
And they would come around there and knock on the door, and my grandmother would give them something to eat. She'd make them a sandwich. And sometimes whole families would come off the railroad tracks with mother and father and all the kids, and they'd come and they'd stay in the backyard for a while until my grandmother couldn't feed them anymore, and they'd go home.
Get back on the train.
Yeah. And I say on Peachtree, not many people were moving around, not anything like it is now. There was still some horse-driven wagons and things on the road, but 99% automobiles. But they the milkman came around, and he had a horse pulling his wagon, and the horse was trained. He would go to one house and stop, and he would deliver the milk. He'd go to the next one, and the guy jumped out and delivered the milk. And didn't have to train the horse. He did that. And we had farmers who would come by in their wagons and have what they grew and sell it to you right there, so you didn't have to go to the store.
Horse-drawn and mule-drawn wagons from the farmers, too.
You remember, they had chickens there, my grandmother would say. Oh, that looks like a nice hen over there. And we ate hens which were bigger than the chickens you buy in the store now. These are big hens.
Wow.
And they were live, and then the old man would, the farmer would take the hen out there and wring its neck right there. And my grandmother would get Jenny, her cook, a maid, to pick the chicken and pick all the feathers off of it, and
Sunday dinner.
Had a lot of eggs inside of it, and we would fight over the eggs. Who got the eggs? So this was big hen. It wasn't like the little chickens you see in the store now.
So it was almost a rural area right around Atlanta where you could.
It wasn't. It wasn't still rural, but it was
nearby.
A lot of vacant stuff there that had been farms and things.
Yeah. Didn't you have some animals that didn't you get taken out of E River School because there was a dog?
That was my friend Sonny Hood had a pony, and he got loose and running up and down Peachtree, and they had to go down to E Rivers and get us out to go see if we could capture the pony. And he was in the middle of Peachtree eating grass between the railroad tracks. I mean the streetcar tracks. We had streetcars that ran up and down Peachtree.
That's cool.
Yeah.
For how much was it to ride one, you think? Probably
Well, it was 10 cents. They had a token. You could buy a token.
Yeah.
I've forgotten, but I think it was about 10 cents.
Wasn't much.
Yeah. Well, that was a lot.
Well, $1 was worth a lot more.
tell you, I remember we bought gasoline for 15 cents a gallon.
Wow.
Now it is, what, $4 a gallon, something like that.
Wow.
So we bought gasoline right off the railroad tracks. And the tankers come by, and they call it spur gasoline because they put the tankers on a spur.
The railroad spur.
Yeah, and you put your car down there and fill it up for 15 cents a gallon.
Wow.
But, you know, bread was 10 cents a gallon, too. I mean, 10 cents a loaf of bread, white bread. And we didn't know that white bread, we ought to have
Wheat.
full grain bread. So we ate white bread, and we thought it was amazing that it came already sliced.
Greatest thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
That
was a really amazing trick. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about, transportation, but also how you got news and
Well, radio had first started about 10 years before that, but just barely started because nobody had radios to listen to. So this WSB was the first radio station in Atlanta, and they would talk to the whole country. They had a clear channel station to the whole country. They'd say WSB, Atlanta, Georgia, like they were talking to somebody around the world. But about in the early 30s, people were beginning to get radios, and they were huge, like a big piece of furniture, and they had a big funnel up that
Rara has one, an old radio to his family.
Big keep the music out, and so that's what we had there. And we did have a telephone, but of course there was no dial or anything. He would pick up the phone and they'd say, "Number, please," and he would give them the number.
Real operator was someone.
And they would plug it into whoever else was in town. You know.
The phone numbers were different in the 1930s too.
Well, they started out, there were only 3 numbers. 406 was your number. You had 5, but then they came to 4 numbers. And then they put in exchanges, like we had Hemlock 4026, and then like that was the number.
Different words.
Yeah.
And what about television? The first one?
No, television didn't come for years later.
40s, right?
Well, we didn't have any in the 40s. With
radio, and you gather around, right?
When the World's Fair of 1939 came along, a bunch of guys, we decided to go up there, and we arranged a deal where we could go up to New York and see the World's Fair for $40 round trip. For getting on the railroad and going up there for $40 and seeing the World's Fair and come back. That's what we did. So that's where I saw my first experimental television. And there was nothing but lines. I could barely see somebody's face or something. You could make out it. But that was the first one I saw.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah. And then ask me some more questions. What do you want to hear about?
Do you ever remember seeing, and I'll ask some questions, because I studied the 1930s and interviewed him when I was a race. But
what do you got on the list?
About if he ever remembers hearing FDR.
Yeah, what do you remember about
Yes,
the president?
he came down. He came down to Warm Springs, Georgia, because he had polio that made him crippled. Very bad. Everybody was scared of polio. Yeah. And when they would get a case of it in school, they'd shut down school. Wow. Not even talk to people. You couldn't even talk to other children. Because when you got that, many times you'd come out crippled for life. And they didn't find a vaccine for that until after World War II.
Yeah.
And so that was a big load off everybody's mind because they worried about polio.
Because the president.
And the president had it.
Yeah, but didn't he get it from one of the countries he got to?
What?
I don't know how FDR got polio. It was a disease that we didn't have any vaccine for. And
no cure for it. Mm-hmm. So finally he bought Warm Springs, Georgia, which was a little house down there at Warm Springs that he came and stayed in. Now I remember my mother knew the lady that was taking care of that house when he wasn't there. And I went down there and I jumped up and down
When
And I saw him a couple of times come through Atlanta. He spoke out at Oglethorpe University one time, and I saw him then. And after the Mrs. Roosevelt came to E-Rivers and talked to our school, the kids.
Wow, that's so cool.
She knew some people in Atlanta.
Eleanor.
Eleanor Roosevelt, right?
So you
She was very active.
To your school, huh?
It had a daily newspaper article, a column in the paper every day, and it was called My Day. And she talked about what she did that day.
Right.
That's cool.
What about famous sports stars from Atlanta? You don't know a lot about him, but a famous golfer grew up in Atlanta, and it was a big deal in the 30s.
Yeah.
Bobby Jones.
Bobby Jones. He grew up with my mother. They lived around East Lake Golf Club. It's still there. And Bobby Jones was, I think he was 2 years older than my mother. And he won every golf match there is to win in Europe and U.S. The British Open, the British Amateur, the U.S. Open, and the U.S. Amateur, all in 1 year. And so he was when he came back to New York from Scotland, they gave him a ticker-tape parade down Broadway in New York.
And he was from Little Atlanta. Atlanta wasn't a very big town back then.
And so he was a great hero, and he's still looked up to as one of the greatest golfers that ever was.
He started the Masters. The first one was in 1937. Or 34, maybe.
He won the first
No, I think it was later than that.
The very, very first.
I'm not sure when it did, but he did start the Masters over in Augusta.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, right. And he knew me. I knew his kids.
Yeah.
And I know.
Grew up with your mom.
Yeah.
And around East Lake.
No, they grew up in Atlanta.
Okay.
And I knew Bobby Jr. He later owned a Coke bottling plant up in Maine. I knew his daughter who could burp. She could burp. You know, you could say, "Burp, Mary," and she'd go. She could do it on her.
That's interesting.
And what else? Then I see Bobby Jones and
what else was going on?
Well, Oglethorpe had a football team, and they were really good.
Yeah.
They played Georgia, and they played Tech.
Your father
They played Auburn.
Yeah.
And they played all of the Oglethorpe. And my dad played for them, and he was a great star. He was a quarterback, and he was a great football star.
When did he play? In the late 20s?
Yeah, he played in the 20s when he was 20.
And your mother, talk a little bit about how she got it. I guess that was later on in Atlanta, but there weren't many women that worked, and she was one of the first teachers.
Yeah, she was one of the first women.
She got involved with CNS.
We didn't have any income. She had at all, and so she worked a while, a good while, for Davison's downtown, and became really sort of famous. She was doing what she did. She
so kind of a socialite around.
now she helps people whatever their problems was, and she took the name of Iris Lee. That's a fake name to use when she was working. So she was Iris Lee
during the Depression.
And they would always have in the paper, Iris Lee says this, Iris Lee says that, and people would ask questions, you know, that what should I wear? What should I wear to go and have tea at the driving club? And Iris Lee would tell them what to wear.
Well,
yeah, and also sell them some clothes at the same time.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
I have never heard that.
Yeah, so I went on through E-Rivers, and that was good. My uncles went out west and brought home some coyotes, and everybody wanted to stop and see the coyotes. And I took my third grade class was walking up to, we could walk to my house, and we took the whole class up there to see the coyotes.
Good grief.
Yeah.
Wow.
And somebody had let them loose, and they barked for years back over there where Bobby Jones golf course is. Now, the golf course wasn't bad, but they got loose and they barked for years and years over there.
Which uncles are these there? I guess your mother's a Western trip?
Yeah.
Okay. That was an interesting time.
Yeah.
Well, do you have any other questions, Ann, about the 1930s?
Yeah, well, I'll ask him that.
Yeah.
I had, what was different, what was life how was life after the Great Depression?
Well, actually, during the Depression, there was no jobs for men. Or women didn't work, usually except in the cotton mills and in factory jobs. It was very bad. So Roosevelt started what they called the CCC, the Civilian Conservation Corps, and who paid young men to go and work on various projects. They paid them, I think they paid them $20 a month. They gave them $10 to spend, and $10 went back to their mom. And that was keeping all those people busy. And he had other legislation to keep people busy because they didn't have any working. And had what he called the National Recovery Act, which the various companies had to sign up that they would not let anybody work more than 40 hours a week. So they had to hire somebody else if they wanted to do that. So they had to agree to it. And the Supreme Court, this man named Chicken, filed suit against the government, and they declared the National Recovery Act unconstitutional against the law. So that case, we call it the Sick Chicken case because his name sounds like Sick Chicken. And then there was...
The economy was a sick...
Yeah, and everybody was watching Hitler in Europe and Japanese in Asia. And it was very bad. We just wondered what was going to happen because it's getting bad. And then in 1939, the war started in Europe. And we started trying to help them out. And Roosevelt figured all kinds of different ways to help out England. By what he called Lend-Lease. He would actually send them old Navy ships, destroyer ships, and just say, you can pay us back after the war. But of course they never paid us back. Then the German subs began sinking ships right off in the ocean, right off Georgia and Florida. And I remember seeing oil from those ships all up and down the beach where they burned the ships. And that was at before we got into World War II. When Germany we had these groups of Navy ships would escort other things over to England, and they would sink them on the way. And then the Japs attacked Pearl Harbor. Yeah. It was Sunday, and I went to the movies with my mother downtown at the Paramount Theater, and we were looking at Bing Crosby and something with Dorothy Lamour and Bing Crosby. And when we came out of the theater, there was already newspapers out. Japs attack.
And they called that an extra, didn't they? Where the newsboy would run up the street. Breaking news. The newspapers, anything new that happened, there'd a whole lot of people that didn't have work would grab a bunch of papers downtown and run them on extra, selling them until they went up all the way out to Buckhead. All about it.
Wow.
But anyway, so I was
shocked walking out of the movie
I was beginning North Fulton at the end of 1937 high school.
That's a high school.
Yeah. And we had to take a whole lot of students in that came from Hawaii that they thought the Japanese were going to invade. And so they sent a lot of children over here and to North Fulton. We had I remember there was a girl that came to North Fulton that had a Japanese shell in her hand that she had picked up after the thing.
Wow.
Yeah. So
life changed.
So we entered World War II still in the Depression, and actually it gave people something to do in the airplane factories, and building ships and tanks and all that kind of stuff. So everybody signed up. There wasn't any question of who went. Everybody went. It was old 18 and 45. So now what else else you want to hear about? I just can't remember exactly what you want to know.
Well, that's perfect. Everything you were talking about, and part of our question was, well, how did it affect you? The depression.
Well, it affected us.
Made you save more money when you got older too.
Well, when the war in Europe started, which is right at the end of what we think of as a depression, they started rationing.
Yeah, rations were
They gave us little stamps.
Right.
They rationed automobile tires, and it was really, to get a new tire, you had to be very important to the government. So and for gasoline, they rationed gasoline. If you were important, you got a D sticker, and the less important people got an A.
Right.
So you didn't get much gas if you had an A stick on your car. And they also had meat rationing. You couldn't get meat because there was so much meat that you could get. And everybody wanted to be a friend of the butcher because he was a powerful man. He could give you the meat or not give you the meat. So you had to make friends with the butcher.
Tell her about when you signed up and what you did after.
Well, that's the war. This is not the depression. Well, I was 17 when Pearl Harbor came. So I went to North Dakota, graduated in the class of 42. Is it still working there?
Yeah, it's still working.
Yes. And so I had to wait until September, until I was 18 to get in.
Wow.
So,
and then once you got...
Once I got 18, I signed up in the Naval Air Corps, and I was signed up over national radio with Tommy Dorsey and some others on the national deal.
Right.
Yeah. I had already signed up, but they made me sign up again on national television.
Yeah. Well, were there broadcasting?
Yeah, we were broadcasting from WSB at the Biltmore Hotel. And so, that'll tell you much about the Depression. The thing is that people want to compare it to the recession that we have now. It's nothing like that. It was a lot worse then. You could go out on the streets, there were not people going on the streets because it cost money to go, you know. They had cars and people walked a lot of places and rode bicycles. And,
well, people were getting off the trains too, like you said. That was
train stop.
So it was like that on the cars, and we couldn't make a payment on the Hudson Terraplane one time. We missed 2 payments, so the bank wanted the car back. So they sent a guy out from the courthouse on a bicycle, and he got the Hudson Terraplane and put the bicycle in the trunk and drove off with it. So he went back to the bank. So we had to scrounge up for some more money so we could go get our car back.